And we're back from our 35-second hiatus in real time here, pausing the recording of last week's episode and starting up this one. And we are back with the wonderful, talented Nick Nagurka. And I just realized, am I pronouncing that correctly?
You're nailing it. Yeah,
okay, all right. I realized I should have asked that before I said it in the last episode, but you didn't like grimace, so I took it as a win.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard all permutations of my last name, so.
I mean, you should hear what I call you behind your back.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, let's not get too heated, all right?
I love you, Nick. Okay, so in this episode, or this part of the episode, I would really love to kind of take us out of the technical side of working with a live band, recording in the room, no headphones, trying to get it, capturing an amazing performance, get out of the technical side, and I want to get into the mental side and the interpersonal side of what it's like to be in that space, trying to make everybody feel confident, comfortable, and eliciting the best performance that you can, while also trying not to, screw anything up technically. So let's start with a failure and then we'll work towards a win, right? But do you have a story about a session where you killed the vibe unintentionally? And this might be a no because you're the man. So I don't know if there even is one, but I'm just wondering if you had any maybe some learning experiences from doing this and the way that you guys are doing it.
Mm-hmm. I think there have been times where I've said no where I shouldn't have, and I think sometimes that's not really a thing you want to say to people. It's like, hey, could we try doing this? And it's like, no, I don't think we should. And I always try to catch myself before I start saying no, because I think there may be things that are actually not possible. It's like, can we do a clavinet on this? It's like, I don't have a clavinet, or Theo doesn't have a clavinet or whatever. But there are other things where it's like, hey, do you think we could well, I mean, I guess for one example was when we did Wait for the Moment, the Wolfpack song. And I think that was on my 22nd birthday or something. And I was like, I mean, I guess I'll come in and record a song with the guys on my birthday. I was kind of had other plans, but let's do it. And it turned out to be amazing. But I really wanted to put Antoine in the vocal booth because I was like, well, it's going to be really hard to get a good sounding vocal with him in the room, the same, right next to the drums. And we just ended up going for it. And I'm so glad we did. And it worked out really well because we put a figure 8 ribbon with the null pointed at the drums. And it's if you listen to the multi-track, there's basically no drums in it. And I was just a ninny about it. So, oh, well, it's that was kind of the first learning experience of accepting that you should take chances and at least try it the first time. And, if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But there's no use in not trying it unless you're out of time, Yeah.
That's amazing. I've always been a big believer that a lot of best practices are bullshit. And I think, yes, there are times and places when keeping the vocalist in a booth makes total sense. But I think when we just default our opinion to, what we learned in school or what we read on the internet or what we've done in the past, even if it has nothing to do with outside influence, there's just something, either it works really well and you're pleasantly surprised, or it doesn't work at all and then they trust you because you were your gut said it wasn't going to work, but you tried it anyway. So there's still a way to kind of build a rapport with people even in that situation.
Oh, totally.
And I also feel I've spoken about this a lot on the podcast of I'm a recovering perfectionist, but I feel like people that do what we do are often perfectionists, and there's a fear of failure. And one of the big lessons also in business and in other aspects of life is if you don't fail, you don't know, so you gotta be able to fail sometimes in order to take those chances that are gonna have big payoffs, And in this case, I'm talking about Sonics. So
Totally. Well, I feel like it's also a thing of like, you're like, oh, I know how like beautiful this vocal could be if it didn't have drum bleed in it. It's like, well, I mean, that might actually undermine the performance to not have them in the same room. You know, it's like that like physical barrier between people, like really it undermines connection. And isn't music all about connection? It's not about sounding perfect, you know?
Yeah.
It should sound good probably, but shouldn't sound perfect. It should sound human.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. But also remember that nobody's going to listen to that vocal in isolation ever, right?
Exactly.
Except for us.
Yeah. And it brings me back to what we talked about in the last episode, where it was, you were explaining how you have the bass going through a DI to record it, but also in the room it's going through a guitar amp with all of the lows, turned down. And I feel like there is this element of, as a vocalist, even though I'm not a vocalist, I've recorded percussion parts in an ISO booth, and I've done gang vocals in an ISO booth. And like, there is a very different feeling when all of the music is being heard through your headphones, but not through your chest, and I think especially for, I would argue that even as a drummer, I would say that a vocalist has a more physical vocals are a more physical instrument, because it's just, there's so much going on. Even if my arms are moving more, there's so many moving parts and so many things. And I feel like the physicality of hearing, of the wall of sound of the rest of the band, feeling the bass, feeling the kick drum, feeling the snare drum, has such an effect on the vocal performance. And I think even for the general listener, I think even for a lot of audio nerds, it can be a bit of a messy recording, but if the take is there, the take's fucking there, right? And I think anybody that picks apart an amazing performance because of some, technicalities, I think they're kind of missing the point, or maybe they're like studying. They're in like academia mode. Right. Mm-hmm. But listening back to old Mingus records or Coltrane, like, yeah, there's definitely, not the best recording quality for some of them. And especially a lot of like live recordings. But oh my God, like the emotion that's in there completely trumps any sonic issues. And yeah, sorry, I'm getting emotional. But has that been like an influence on you? Like have listening to old records like that, like directly influenced the way that you do this? Or is this something that kind of came out naturally, and kind of coincidentally?
Well, I think about like, it's like one of my favorite records, Quadrophenia by The Who, I grew up thinking like this is an extraordinary sounding record. And then I finally got to listen to it on good headphones, and I'm like, man, like left and right on the drums are like pretty much out of phase. And this is weird. It's like kind of disconcerting, but it doesn't make it anything less great. It's still extraordinarily compelling. And there's so much to it, like musically, that is so compelling. And I think like, yeah, it's all about the performance. And you want to feel immersed in it. And there's certain things that I love about records that I grew up from the 70s, like Little Feat or like the Eagles or whatever. And I can like take a little bit from each of them. And that's kind of what I bring to like my own influence. It's like, I finally did my like ideal 70s, like Don Henley kick drum, That's great, but it's not going to be like, well, everything has to sound like this now. I think there's so much beauty in the imperfection of those things, like you listen to Harvest Neil Young record. It's like, why is this, what is it? The snare drum's over on the left, like, why is that? I would never do that, but it just gives you such this sense of like width that is so cool. And you don't really hear these days, but there's a sense of space. And I think the sense of space, whatever that is really, really important. And a lot of that's the bleed.
Yeah, I think the same.
Happy accidents.
The same with was it Caravan, the Van Morrison song? I think the drums are like all the way on the left too, and it's disconcerting the first time that you hear it, and then you're like, oh, no, this works. This
Does
shouldn't work, but it works.
Yeah.
I was just listening to Jimi Hendrix today in the car with my son. I was taking him to swimming lesson, and it's like the panning stuff is also crazy and weird, but it's so cool. And it's like those are not really clean recordings, but they kick so much ass, you know?
Oh, they rule. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're just so gnarly and like, yeah, just like it sounds like wow. Like the tape machines were like they had a thing going at that point, you know, for sure.
Yeah.
It was definitely a sound.
So how do you handle when you have an artist that you're trying to track that they don't want that? You know, do you get a lot of clients that want very modern, very pristine, very plug-in-y kind of records, or are you at a point where the people that are coming to you are coming to you because they know what you do?
I think it kind of runs the gamut. I mean, I mixed a K-pop song for a film recently that was really fun. And it's something that's just like so outside of what I normally do. I just wanted to do it. And I had a blast, you know, and it was just, that's all programmed, you know, comp vocals, tuned vocals, the whole deal. And I just enjoyed it so much. And I think I love doing that stuff because I think people don't assume that's something I would enjoy or excel at. But I just want to make big hi-fi records in whatever form they are, you know? And I think if, you know, like live albums, like Theo's new live album that's about to come out is kind of like 180 degrees sonically from all the stuff that we're doing at his studio either. It's like very modern and clean and gigantic sounding in a way that is like, I just wanted it to be as real and as immersive as if you were, you know, in the best venue with the best PA, just getting hit in the face with, you know, 12, 18-inch subwoofers and you know, a couple of line arrays, you know, and it's great. You know, I wanted to feel how I feel like when I'm mixing in front of a house. And so that's a very different thing than feeling something like it is in the room. But I think they are essentially the same thing. It's like realism.
Yeah.
In whatever way that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we don't really do things tracking wise that I don't think a project would get to the point of us tracking if it wasn't what the artist really wanted to do or the artist felt comfortable with pulling off, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me think about a good question that we could kind of get into like the dynamics of a band. I don't know, Carl, do you have anything?
Yeah. Okay. So when these people, you know, when somebody's coming to you because they know what you do well, they understand that you get really great, just like really great realistic performance captures. And they know that there's a vibe there. They know that, you know, there's an energy that, you know, you bring to it, that Theo brings to it. But if it's an artist or a band that you haven't worked with before, what are the first things that you do to help them feel comfortable in that sort of a situation? Because I'm sure, like, you know, you're an exception, you know, when it comes to the process, right? Like, it's very rare that that producers and engineers are doing sessions that you're not using headphones. Like, you're not using headphones, but you're doing it intentionally. You know, it's not just like, you know, somebody's cousin in their basement is doing it. Like, this is like the real deal, but with a bit of a different approach. So when somebody comes to you that wants to have that experience, wants to have that, to be put in that situation, but hasn't been in that situation before, what do you do first to make them feel comfortable being in that situation?
Well, I think the beauty of it is that like they get the Theo stamp of approval before even meeting me. So it's like they know that anyone who's like being brought into this record, we're all here for the same reason, and we're all here because we love Theo and because we trust Theo. And we're starting to build a track record now of results that kind of are going to be speaking for themselves, which I'm very proud of. But I think when people show up, it's like we're all out there like living together for a week, basically. So we're cooking our meals together, we're eating together, we're, you know, having a couple of beers after the session, we're sharing our favorite music on the stereo and just vibing on that. And so I think like building that sort of common core of like, oh, have you heard the Super Drag record? I love this. And they're like, dude, yes. And I'm like, yeah, my dad had that CD when I was a kid. It was like spinning all the time, and we connect on those levels. And I think that builds like a sense of like trust just musically, and it's in the end, it's just, we're all becoming friends, and we're all learning to trust each other, and we're all learning to speak a common language. And so like when people get in, we just, I don't know, the studio is basically all open. So, just run in and like start playing together, and they'll be playing together while I'm setting up and just getting comfortable with each other long before we're doing any takes, Yeah. And I think that's the important part, is everyone starts to balance themselves and like learn the songs. Most of the time people are just learning the songs right before we're getting into doing takes. So they're learning them as a band in the room together and getting comfortable with that. And I'm there to just facilitate anything they need. And, sometimes the songs are, sometimes the songs require great care, and they require like great respect for the person who's like bearing that part of their soul. And I think that's really important to remember, not to just come crashing through like a bull in the china shop,
Yeah.
So it's just, being present is really important.
And that trust that you've earned from them makes them much more accepting of the unconventional recording approaches that you're inevitably going to have to convince them to try, right? Like they're going to be a lot more willing to take the headphones off, to roll off the low end on the bass, to keep the vocalist out in the room. When that's something that is going to be they're going to be doing a very foreign thing in a place that has quickly become very comfortable. So it's an interesting dynamic that they're going through in that time.
Oh, definitely. And I think I've noticed that most people take to it really, really quickly. And, most of these players they're just total slayers. They come in, they could play on a short scale, like kids P bass, and make it sound amazing. So they're very adaptable. And I think they bring really most of the credit should probably go to the musicians, because they play with so much touch, so much feel, so much attention to detail and tone and performance and sensitivity that a lot of people could do what I do, because they're bringing something that is so cohesive and well thought out, and their sense of every detail is basically delivered in the room. And I think that's something that we should all remember, is that tone comes from the player. And so then all we do is just turn it up and embellish it in the best way we can. And yeah, you can screw it up. You can certainly screw anything up, but so much of that is the players, and they're so ridiculously good. And I love it. I'm very spoiled.
That's awesome. What I'm thinking about here is as you're describing these sort of sessions and how they begin and how they kind of evolve, it seems super luxurious and laid back at the beginning, it's almost like a band camp or something, like a special a retreat, So how do you kind of get the players from being cool, I'm on this amazing retreat with my friends, we're sharing music, we're playing together, we're having such a good time. How do you get them into that focused, okay, now it's time to do a take and get the shit done? So what does that transition look like from this is just such a great time with my friends and jamming and music and sharing to all right, let's make a record? What does that look like?
Usually it looks like just having a schedule for us. It's start at 10 or 11, get the first tune, maybe get the second tune before dinner. It kind of varies depending on the group, but we're trying to get 2 tunes a day, sometimes 3, and so it's just everyone is okay, we're going to start learning this tune at 11. So if you want coffee, get your coffee before, arrive fed and watered. And then if you're, everyone who does this for a living realizes that call time's call time. It's kind of like bus call on tour. It's well, if you miss bus call, you're taking the most expensive Uber of your life. So sorry, so, some bands we'll stick to it more closely than others, but we try to get ahead of schedule as early as possible. And And that's nice because then you can revisit a tune later down the road if you're not sure if you got the take. But you might do like 3, 4, 5 takes on a song after learning it, or some songs might be 15 takes. So it varies, but it's nice to like really push hard and be cognizant of like the time that it's taking to get your songs and like make sure everybody gets fed. You know, we'll take breaks in the afternoon, sometimes go for a hike or whatever. But yeah, just a little bit of structure helps a lot, you know.
That was my next question was like, do you plan for mental breaks? Because I feel like that's something that I've seen a lot of engineers and producers who do want to run a tight ship when it comes to their itinerary for the day. And it's just go, 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 go. And next thing you know, 12 hours have passed and they forgot to pee. You know what I mean? Like they schedule themselves to like an unhealthy amount. So that the fact that, I mean, I'm not at all surprised, you know, from knowing you and, you know, hearing about the way that you work and what that, you know, what the camp is like. I'm not at all surprised that you're going to take a hike break because, God, like reconnecting to nature is going to be huge for that. And I feel like the people that are there, the types of artists that are attracted to working with you and Theo, like that it checks out that they'd probably also be, you know, very into getting some nature time, touching some grass.
Yeah. Well, that's more them than me because, you know, I kind of have access to the great outdoors more than these LA guys do. So it's like they're there for like the full experience. And sometimes I'm like back just like trying to catch up on my emails or whatever, or like, you know, printing roughs or whatever. But I also have to remind myself to take a break because I'll very quickly just like stay in the zone and all of a sudden haven't gotten up from the chair in a little while.
Yeah.
So it's always hard to maintain that balance, but I'm trying to be more disciplined personally about that as well.
Does it seem to have, does it seem that you guys have like a, maybe how do I rephrase this? Like, do you find yourself having like an always be recording kind of mentality for it? Like, do you have everything is like, you try to have it ready to go at the moment's notice, or is it a little bit more pre-planned generally? Like how like what happens when inspiration strikes? Like how quickly do you respond to that?
I'm just always rolling.
Okay.
I roll until I run out of hard drive space. And then I might dump stuff that wasn't as relevant or early takes. But yeah, I mean, each of these songs, if you look at the session file, it's like 40 gigs worth of just live rolling, you know, and that's like all 24 tracks all the time. I'll leave them all open so that I can patch something in if something is just, you know, happening that I didn't know about. But yeah, you just try to always be recording. And, you know, if it's just a bunch of dead air, I'll just abort that roll and then re-roll again. But that was something that I was always kind of drilled into me when I was an assistant and I was running Pro Tools, was that we'd be doing these jazz sessions. And if you weren't rolling, well, then that's not really great. If you're not rolling, it's your fault, you know? And I didn't really want to be at fault for like missing something really, really brilliant. Yeah. So I just always roll.
Yeah. The hard drive space is the cheapest thing we have, right?
Oh, it's so cheap. It's a lot cheaper than tape. So tape, we have to be a little more intentional about if we're doing tape. You know, it's like, is everyone rolling? You know? But it's really easy, like, especially with the video element, you know, obviously video files take up a ton of space. So there's a very conscious, like, rolling, speeding, you know, slate it and then go. So that kind of helps a lot. But I'm always trying to capture the other stuff, the fun little goofy moments.
Wow. It's great.
I have so many questions. I don't want to keep on interrupting, but I want to let you talk.
No, I think you should go because I feel like you have more questions about the interpersonal stuff than I do. So I want you to hit them.
Okay, so the band comes in. They're getting comfortable. They're getting familiar with, you know, the whole team. They're getting comfortable with being in a different location than they're used to. They're getting comfortable learning these songs. They're getting comfortable getting ready to record them in a situation that is unlike what they're you know most used to, and they're going to be filmed for a lot of them, like for a lot of those projects. So there's the pressure of getting, you know, not just like playing the song in the right order, but it's like getting a really great performance, getting getting a really good performance, making sure that sonically they're not doing anything to make it harder. Like, make the drummer is trying to make sure that they're staying, in their in their volume lane, right? Bass players trying not to like dig in too hard or more hard than they would want to. And then you add the element of the visuals and being on camera. So it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure from a lot of different angles, kind of all at once. So obviously there's a lot of pressure for you, but there's also a lot of pressure for the artist. Now, the difference is you're getting paid to deal with that pressure. They're paying to deal with that pressure, right? So how do you help to like ease that pressure, make them feel comfortable, make them not feel, clenching their sphincters so tight that, the I don't know where the end of that metaphor goes, but what do you do to make them feel like, okay, it doesn't matter that the camera's on. It doesn't matter that we have to get like a really great take. I'm just going to play my heart out and it's going to be fucking wild.
So much of that comes down to like Theo's way of producing. Because, when Theo's playing drums on these things, he's sort of like leading, he's the band leader as a drummer and like helping make sure everyone's ideas are sort of facilitated or feel heard and making sure that everyone feels comfortable. So it's like there's just an open line of dialogue between control room and live room that is just like, it's like, hey, are you hearing that thing in the floor time? I'm like, yeah, like, what can you do about it? And we're working on that while they're working out the form of a turnaround, chord structure wise. And I think it's, if somebody wants to sing a guitar kind of, sing and play guitar kind of line, like this on, we have these van chairs that people sit in, like from a Chevy G20 van that are awesome. But if somebody wants to like kind of lay almost flat on their back, reclining on a chair, singing and playing guitar, and that's how it feels best to deliver the song, yeah, we'll just make sure the mics get there. And, I think it's all about it. Everyone feeling comfortable. And feeling comfortable and feeling like you can deliver the intent of the song is how we get takes. And it's funny because some people say like, this is kind of like this is definitely the fastest, easiest record making process ever, because it kind of feels like rehearsal. If you treat it like it feels like rehearsal space, that's the most natural way people play music, and like you don't have to hear every like minutia of your voice through the headphones either and worry about like, is this mic right for me or anything like that. You don't have to deal with the occlusion effect of wearing headphones or in-ears or hearing your voice sound like it's like you're plugging your ears, any of that stuff. You're just singing the songs like you wrote them. And I think that's, they kind of enable themselves to succeed because as long as you feel comfortable.
Right. It's like just because we have access to the technology that says we can hyperanalyze every single moment of every single instrument in this record doesn't mean we have to, right? Like,
yeah.
Maybe that's not the best way for everyone or for every sort of record. And so I totally understand. Like, I'm sure you've made records also where it's like just the timeline is super short. And so it's just like you feel the space you have, like Parkinson's law, right?
Yeah.
And like it could turn out amazing because you're just not overthinking everything. You're just kind of like, okay, let's go, let's do that, blah blah blah. And like, is the vibe there? Yes or no? Almost like an experiment at the end. Like you run your experiment. Is the vibe there? And you could just listen back and know, as opposed to just like making this work no matter what, and like fixing every little thing no matter what. It's like a healthier mindset, I think.
Yeah, it's like a time. It's like you're capturing a time and a space, and everyone there. Like Theo described this to me really brilliantly the other day. It's like imagine the band is like a bunch of archers, and they're all lining up trying to hit that target, and wherever they end up is where we end up with the record. And it's like a really beautiful thing. Everyone's so honed in on like delivering, and it sort of evolves into its own thing. It's like bass player's version of delivering is it's its own thing, whereas the guitars is this, drums are this, vocal is this, and they all kind of converge eventually into something that's really, really beautiful and really specific to that process. And I think that's really beautiful. I had another thought and I lost it, but it'll come back eventually, I'm sure.
All right. Just speak up whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I want to go back to when you said about how, everybody kind of feels like it's a rehearsal space, right? Like they feel like very comfortable, like they're in that zone. Do you ever have issues where it's sometimes hard to try to think of how to phrase this, but like, I feel like a lot of people have rehearsal tendencies that are different from their performance tendencies, right? Like there's the mantra of, practice how you perform, but not everybody actually does that. So do you ever find yourself in a position, or I guess, have you ever observed, Theo in a position where he has to kind of wrangle them from rehearsal mode into, oh no, that target that all of you are aiming towards with your bow and arrow, like that's the target. We got to make sure we're all at the same place.
Yeah, I think he's like, Theo's really excellent at that because like he's a band leader in his own right and a songwriter in his own right. So he offers that perspective very naturally of like, if I play this long, crash cymbal, is that going to obscure the vocal? Or like if so-and-so plays that guitar line, is that going to interfere with the vocal? And everything really is about like translating that vocal and then building around it and supporting the song and like, how do we deliver the song? And, but yeah, the transition into doing takes is pretty quick. It's usually like, okay, we've got it down, now let's run it. And usually they'll run a few takes, and if it starts getting worn out, Theo will consciously call for running an instrumental without the vocal, so you can focus on the arrangement and not be just following the vocal for the song structure. And then maybe take a break and then just run it. And usually that's when you get the take. Is it's like, you've really honed in on the song and the sort of nuance that builds the bed of the track. And then they run it and they get it really quickly. It's kind of amazing. And also, like, if you wanted a TV mix, like an instrumental version, well, you can't really get that without re-recording the song. So that's the other kind of funny part, is you get a free instrumental.
Yeah.
Ever used
music rebalance, right?
Right.
Totally.
No, that's great.
That's so cool. Yeah, I feel like with this stuff anyways, like you just want one take to rule them all.
Totally.
Right? You're not like splicing different takes together ever, are you? Or is it always like one full take, or do you sometimes combine takes?
We've spliced like when the occasion calls for it, but it's pretty rare. You'll see it coming out hopefully soon on Theo's live record, where I cut between venues for a couple of songs. And so it'd be like Downbeat of Bridge is like cutting from one venue to another venue of a similar size. And then like pick up into a solo. It's like pick up from this venue, Downbeat of solo in this other venue. And you'll see it on the video when it cuts. It's wild. But they're just ridiculously consistent. They don't even play to tracks or a click or anything like that. But it was like, I just did a straight up butt splice, tap the transient to the kick drum, scoot them together. And it was like barely even a click. It, like no audible click or pop. It was just like, okay, go. These guys are just so good.
What was the decision-making process behind that? Like, was it just to get a better take, or was there like an aesthetic choice? Like, oh, we want to see what it feels like to go from one night to another one.
Well, it's funny because we just, I think Theo came with my wife and I to like watch the Beyonce movie in IMAX. And then I got us talking about the Beyonce Coachella performance where they switch from night to night. And you can see because their outfits change in the middle of a song. It goes from like pink to yellow, I think, or something like that. And I was like, that's so badass. I want to do that. And so we were just having a moment during one song where it's like, oh, I like the solo from this venue, but I like the vocal performance from this one. I was like, well, you want to give me 5 minutes? And like, we'll put this together and see if it works. And it just did.
I love the audacity that it's like, I'm going to splice together two no click track live performances. Give me 5 minutes. I love the fact that you did that, and also the fact that you had so much trust in Theo and the band that you knew you didn't even like think twice. You're like, yeah, I'll at least try it because it's probably going to work.
Well, it's it's just a lifetime of like trying not to say no anymore to things that like are probably a dumb idea, but could be cool.
Yeah,
right. It's taking us back to the previous episode where we went. That was like the first aha moment.
Yeah. I mean, stitching the multi-track together actually was a real pain, because then you'd have like all the phase relationships between all the drum mics and like say like the crowd mics as well. Like all that would shift if you're just stitching the multi-tracks together from two different shows, even though we set them up pretty close to the same every night. So I had to go through and auto align all the shows and like so that I could mix it all in one session. But that's a fun little technical job.
Wow, that sounds like more than 5 minutes. But sure,
yeah, that's a day,
and it doesn't sound fun. That's the most sarcastic use of the word "fun" I've heard in a long time.
So much fun.
But this is the job, right? That's the gig.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the payoff was worth it.
Yeah,
Nick,
exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I don't know, Ben. You know what, Ben? I know you had a specific nerdy bass question. I want to let you ask it.
I will. I was going to do this off the air, but we could do it on the air and see how it goes. What's the song on the Wolfpack record? Just the opening track, Sauna.
Okay.
Yeah. Joe Dart is playing that miniature childlike P bass with I think foam, and he's doing like these like little sort of mutes.
Oh yeah,
it's just like the fattest bass sound ever. I was obsessed with the tone on the bass. What was what was tracking at? Like I don't think you mixed it. Did you mix it?
No, I didn't mix it.
But because Jack mixes everything. Wolf.
Yeah.
So, what do you remember in terms of like creating that bass sound?
Yeah, so that was that's the Shaw tube injection DI. Probably just cranked pretty hard into an Audioscape Blue Stripe 1176 at probably 8-1. Attack at maybe 3, release at like 6.5, 7, depending on like the tempo of the song, so it doesn't distort too much. And probably doing like 10 or 15 dB compression at times, because that it just like,
whoa,
that particular box has so much gain on the input, it's ridiculous. So it's tough to control. It's very like, it's like, oops. You really have to dial in the sweet spot. It's kind of hard, but it has this brilliant distortion to it that is so nice and works really well on a bass. And then probably into a Midas EQ on the console, and then to Pro Tools. And the Midas EQs are really nice because you can really, they're like fully sweepable, fully parametric. You can really dial goofy stuff in. But yeah, I think I was just like hitting it pretty hard with the 1176. And I looked over at one point and was like, oh, wow. Like, it's like still less aggressive than what Jack's going to do.
Right. With the Wolf compressor.
Yeah. And yeah, it's probably Wolf compressor. And I remember one time we were in college and Jack turned me on to like the soft tube, like bass amp room or whatever. And it has this crazy thing. If you turn the knob all the way over to DI, you can get this ridiculous, like low end bloom. That's just like subharmonic stuff. And I haven't seen anything that Jack's been doing in a long time. So like, I'd be really interested to hear what he did.
I've been trying to reach out to Jack Stratton for years. So if we could ever get him on the show. That's awesome. I have like a theory that short scale basses are better than long scale bass. I'm sort of in that zone right now. So
yeah.
I was really into the sound of the bass specifically on that record. I mean the whole record, but that specifically the bass on that song on the record, I was just like, damn, this is just like the coolest sounding bass tone.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And I'm amazed that you got that many dB of reduction before Jack compressed it more. That's crazy to me.
Oops.
Awesome. Oh, it's great. It's just good to hear that like I never use 1176 compressors on bass, and I would never do that much compression on bass. pretty much. Not because I just never have felt the need to, but it's just great to hear that shit can be crazy and sound amazing, and
Yeah.
not what I was expecting. So thank you for that.
Of course. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have. I think this is a great place to wrap these episodes. This has been so fun. Thank you for sharing so much information with us, Nick, and for just being a great hang, and for taking the time to from your busy life to hang with me and Carl. So,
Well, thanks for having me, guys, and thanks for letting me just kind of ramble and explore my ADHD brain.
No.
It's been really fun.
that's all three of us.
Yeah, you're in good company.
Hell yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Arigato gozaimasu.
Yes,
as they say in Japan.
And also that. Nick, appreciate you so much. Thank you for being on. And the real question now is that we always end our episodes. I say, bye, Ben. And then he says, bye, Carl. And then it just goes to the outro. But now there's a third person here. And it would be really awkward if I said bye to Ben and Ben said bye to me, but none of us said bye to Nick.
I'm also now thinking maybe I could bring back the final question of the show from back in the day. If you'll allow me to do that, Carl.
Do you have
What do you think?
Do you have a few moments, Nick? Are we like completely using up your whole day? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the old final question of the show. Looking back on your journey, was there something you did or did not do that you'd want to either impart on your earlier self or to somebody who's coming up today, of like, hey Nick, keep at that. That's the thing that's going to get you where you want to go. Or Nick, quit doing that. It's holding you back. What's that one piece of advice / the thing?
I would say never intern for free at a recording studio. Don't let anyone dangle the carrot, because all it does is sort of undermine your progress.
To the point.
Yeah. What would you suggest instead? What's a better path?
I would say look for anything where you can find mentorship from someone you trust and from someone who respects you and respects your time and your energy. Because I feel that mentorship is really important in this modern world, especially where so many people have so many ideas of how to do things and there's so much knowledge being shared. But I do feel like mentorship and learning how to do something someone else's way and how to humble yourself into accepting their way of working, even if it's not the thing that you would do, I think it's really important because it'll allow you to develop as a human being as well as a professional.
Fantastic.
Sound advice. No pun intended.
Ugh.
It's like watching Carl's eyes go to the back of his head there. It was amazing.
Yeah, I think I just pulled my retina. Is that a thing?
Amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah, Nick, thank you so much. So glad to have you on here. And I'm just going to go ahead and say I hope you let us bug you to come back on here again in the future.
Of course. I'd be happy to anytime. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks, Nick. All right.
All right. Bye, Ben. Bye, Carl.
Bye,
Bye,
Nick.
Nick.